Emma Rodriguez had always believed in keeping her feet firmly planted on the ground. At 26, she worked as a librarian in the small town of Millbrook, spending her days surrounded by books and her evenings tutoring children in reading. Her life was simple, predictable, and exactly how she liked it. That changed on a cold October evening when she stayed late at the library to catalog new arrivals. The old building creaked in the wind and the fluorescent lights flickered occasionally, casting dancing shadows between the tall bookshelves. Emma hummed softly as she worked, completely unaware that someone was watching her from the darkness outside. When she finally locked up and stepped into the parking lot, a figure emerged from the shadows near her car. Emma's heart jumped as she saw a tall man in an expensive black coat approaching her. His pale skin seemed to glow in the moonlight, and his dark hair was perfectly styled despite the windy night. Most striking were his eyes, an unusual shade of deep blue that seemed to shimmer in the darkness. "Miss Rodriguez," the stranger said in a voice that was smooth as silk and carried a slight accent she couldn't place. "My name is Adrian Blackwood." Emma clutched her keys tighter, her instincts telling her something wasn't right about this man. "Do I know you?" she asked, taking a step back toward the library entrance. Adrian smiled, revealing teeth that seemed unusually white and sharp in the moonlight. "Not yet, but I know you quite well. I've been watching you for some time now." The words sent a chill down Emma's spine. "I think you should leave," she said firmly, though her voice trembled slightly. "I don't know what you want, but I want to marry you," Adrian interrupted, his words hanging in the cold air like a bomb that had just been dropped. Emma stared at him in disbelief. "Excuse me? Are you insane? I don't even know you." Adrian stepped closer, and Emma noticed that despite the freezing temperature, he wasn't breathing vapor like she was. In fact, she couldn't see him breathing at all. "I understand your confusion, but I assure you I'm quite serious. I've chosen you to be my queen." "Your queen?" Emma let out a nervous laugh. "Listen, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I'm not interested. Please leave me alone." She turned toward her car, but Adrian moved with impossible speed, suddenly standing directly in front of her. Emma gasped and stumbled backward, her heart pounding. No human could move that fast. "I'm afraid I can't accept your rejection so easily," Adrian said, his voice taking on a darker tone. "You don't understand who I am or what I'm offering you." "I don't care who you are," Emma said, surprised by the strength in her own voice. "The answer is no. Now get away from me." Adrian's eyes flashed with something that might have been anger or amusement. "You have spirit. I admire that. But you're making a mistake, Emma. I am Adrian Blackwood, and I rule over territories you cannot imagine. I'm offering you immortality, power, and wealth beyond your dreams." Emma's mind raced as she tried to process his words. The way he moved, his pale skin, his sharp teeth, and now talk of immortality, it all pointed to something impossible. Something that belonged in the very books she spent her days organizing, not in real life. "You're talking crazy," she whispered, though part of her was beginning to suspect that he wasn't crazy at all. Immortality isn't real. People don't rule mysterious territories. You're just a man with delusions. Adrian laughed, and the sound was both beautiful and terrifying. "Am I? Tell me, Emma, have you ever wondered why you sometimes feel like someone is watching you? Why you have such vivid dreams of castles and ballrooms? Why certain old books in your library make you feel homesick for places you've never been?" Emma's blood ran cold. She had experienced all of those things, but she had never told anyone about them. How could this stranger possibly know? "Lucky guesses," she said. But her voice lacked conviction. "I know because you're meant to be mine," Adrian said softly. "Your soul calls to mine across the centuries. We are destined to be together." "Destiny isn't real," Emma said firmly, though her hands were shaking. "And I don't belong to anyone. I choose my own path." Adrian's expression hardened. "Everyone belongs to someone, Emma. Everyone has their place in the natural order. You can choose to come with me willingly, or what?" Emma challenged, anger overriding her fear. "You'll force me?" "I'll scream. People will hear." "No one will hear. Adrian said quietly, "and no one would believe you if they did." Emma looked around the empty parking lot and realized how isolated she was. The library was on the edge of town, surrounded by woods on 3 sides. The nearest house was half a mile away. "What are you?" she whispered. Adrian's smile returned, but it wasn't reassuring. "I think you already know the answer to that question." Emma's mind filled with images from countless books and movies: pale skin, inhuman speed, sharp teeth, talk of immortality and ruling over territories. But it was impossible. Vampires weren't real. They were fiction, fantasy, make-believe. "You're insane," she said, but the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. "Am I?" Adrian asked. "Then explain this." He opened his mouth wider, and Emma saw his canine teeth extend into long, sharp fangs. At the same time, his eyes began to glow with an otherworldly light. The temperature around them seemed to drop another 10 degrees. Emma screamed and ran toward her car, her keys fumbling in her shaking hands. Behind her, she heard Adrian sigh. "Running won't change anything, Emma," his voice called out, somehow seeming to come from all around her instead of from where she had left him. "You can't escape what you are, and you can't escape me." Emma managed to get her car door open and threw herself inside, immediately locking the doors. Her hands shook so violently she could barely get the key in the ignition. When she looked up, Adrian was standing directly in front of her car, his arms crossed and his expression patient. She turned the key, and the engine roared to life. Adrian didn't move as she put the car in reverse and backed up quickly, her tires squealing on the asphalt. Only when she had turned around and was speeding toward the road did she dare to look in her rearview mirror. The parking lot was empty. Adrian had vanished as suddenly as he had appeared. Emma drove home in a daze, her mind reeling from what had just happened. By the time she reached her small apartment above the town's coffee shop, she had almost convinced herself it had been a hallucination brought on by stress and too much caffeine. But when she checked her phone, there was a text message from an unknown number. "Think about my offer, Emma. I'll be in touch soon. A. Chi." Deleted the message immediately and double-checked all her locks before going to bed. But sleep didn't come easily, and when it did, her dreams were filled with castles, ballrooms, and a pair of glowing blue eyes that seemed to see straight through to her soul. The next morning, Emma tried to convince herself it had all been a dream. She went to work at the library as usual, helped patrons find books, and organized the children's reading corner for the afternoon story time. Everything was normal and rational and exactly as it should be, but she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. Every time she looked up from her work, she expected to see Adrian Blackwood standing between the stacks waiting for her answer. She found herself jumping at every shadow and checking over her shoulder constantly. "You seem nervous today," said Mrs. Peterson, the elderly woman who volunteered at the library on weekdays. "Is everything all right, dear?" "Just tired," Emma replied, forcing a smile. "I stayed up too late reading." Peterson nodded knowingly. That's the curse of working with books. There's always one more chapter calling your name. If only that were the problem, Emma thought. She would gladly trade a sleepless night caused by a good book for the terror she was feeling now. As the day wore on, Emma began to relax slightly. Maybe Adrian Blackwood, whoever or whatever he was, had decided to leave her alone. Maybe he had found someone else to harass with his insane marriage proposals. But when she was shelving books in the history section that afternoon, she found a single red rose lying on top of the medieval studies shelf. There was no note, but Emma knew who had left it. She looked around quickly, but the library was empty except for old Mr. Harris reading newspapers in the periodicals section. Emma threw the rose in the trash and tried to ignore the way her hands were shaking. This was harassment. Pure and simple. Tomorrow, she would call the police and report Adrian Blackwood as a stalker. They might not believe her story about vampires and supernatural speed, but they would take her seriously about the stalking. That evening, Emma made sure to leave the library with Mrs. D. Peterson, walking to their cars together and making casual conversation until they both drove away. She felt safer having a witness, even if Mrs. Peterson had no idea what was really going on. But when Emma reached her apartment, she found another rose on her doorstep. This one had a note tied to it with a black ribbon. "Roses for beauty, my queen. Your answer won't change what must be." Emma's hands shook as she unlocked her door and rushed inside. She threw the rose away without bringing it into her apartment and spent the evening researching everything she could find online about vampires, supernatural creatures, and protection against them. Most of what she found was obvious fiction or religious superstitions, but some of the older sources mentioned things that made her blood run cold. Stories of vampire kings who ruled over vast supernatural territories. Tales of humans chosen to become vampire queens, whether they wanted to or not. Warnings about the power and persistence of ancient vampires who had set their sights on a particular person. Emma closed her laptop and rubbed her temples. Either she was losing her mind or she was being stalked by something far more dangerous than an ordinary human. Neither option was particularly comforting. She was getting ready for bed when her phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number, but Emma recognized the pattern from the text message she had received the night before. She let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, her phone chimed with a notification. Against her better judgment, Emma played the message. Adrian's voice was as smooth and compelling as it had been in person. "Good evening, Emma. I hope you found my gifts acceptable. I know you're frightened, but there's no need to be. I'm not your enemy. I'm offering you everything a woman could want: eternal youth, unlimited wealth, power beyond imagination, and a love that will last forever. All you have to do is say yes." Emma deleted the message, but Adrian's voice seemed to linger in her apartment like an unwelcome presence. Over the next few days, the gifts continued. Flowers appeared on her car, her doorstep, and even inside the library, though Emma never saw how they got there. Each came with a note, and each note became more insistent. "You cannot hide from destiny, my dear. Your resistance only makes you more beautiful to me. Soon you will understand that you have no choice." Emma called the police after the fourth day, but Officer Martinez looked skeptical when she tried to explain the situation. "So this man asked you to marry him, and now he's leaving you flowers?" Officer Martinez asked, reviewing his notes. "Has he threatened you directly?" "He said I couldn't escape him," Emma said. "And he's not normal. There's something very wrong with him." "Wrong how?" Emma hesitated. How could she explain that Adrian moved faster than humanly possible and had fangs? "He gives me a bad feeling," she said finally, "and he somehow knows things about me that I've never told anyone." Officer Martinez nodded patiently. "I understand you're concerned, Miss Rodriguez, but legally leaving flowers isn't harassment unless the person has been explicitly told to stop contact. Have you told him directly to leave you alone?" "Yes, I told him the first night that I wasn't interested, but not specifically about the flowers." Emma realized she hadn't. She had been too afraid to contact Adrian directly, hoping he would just give up and go away. "I'll file a report," Officer Martinez said. "And if he contacts you again, you should tell him clearly to stop all contact. If he continues after that, we can pursue harassment charges." Emma left the police station feeling more frustrated than helped. How could she make the police understand that this wasn't a normal stalking situation? That evening, as she was closing the library, Emma decided to take Officer Martinez's advice. When she found another rose on her car windshield, this one with a note saying, "Time grows short, my queen," she didn't throw it away immediately. Instead, she took out her phone and called the number Adrian had been texting from. He answered on the first ring as if he had been waiting for her call. "Emma," he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "I was beginning to think you would never call." "I'm calling to tell you to stop," Emma said, proud that her voice sounded steady. "Stop leaving flowers, stop texting, stop calling. I'm not interested in marrying you, and I never will be. If you contact me again, I'll have you arrested for harassment." There was silence on the other end of the line for a moment. Then Adrian laughed, low and rich. "Oh, my dear Emma," he said, "you still don't understand. This isn't about what you want. This is about what you are and what you're meant to become. You can no more choose to reject your destiny than you can choose to stop the sun from rising. I don't believe in destiny, Emma said firmly. I believe in free will, and I'm choosing to have nothing to do with you. Free will, Adrian repeated thoughtfully. How charmingly human of you. Tell me, Emma, do you believe you chose to become fascinated with medieval history? Do you think it was free will that drew you to work in a library surrounded by old books and ancient stories? Was it your choice to remain single while all your friends married, as if you were waiting for someone? Emma's mouth went dry. She had always loved medieval history, ever since she was a child, and she had turned down several relationships over the years, always feeling like something was missing, like she was waiting for someone she hadn't met yet. Coincidence, she whispered. Is it? Adrian asked. What about the dreams, Emma? The dreams of stone castles and candlelit halls? The dreams of dancing in ball gowns with a man whose face you can never quite remember, those aren't coincidences. Those are memories. Memories of what? Emma asked, though she was afraid to hear the answer. Memories of your past life, Adrian said softly. Memories of when you were Catherine Whitmore, daughter of an English lord, in the year 1847. Memories of the woman who was meant to be my bride before death took her from me. Emma almost dropped the phone. That's impossible, is it? Think, Emma. Remember the first time you saw a portrait of a Victorian woman and felt like you were looking in a mirror? Remember how naturally you move in long dresses even though you rarely wear them? Remember how you sometimes speak with words that seem too old for your age? Emma sank against her car, her legs suddenly weak. She did remember all of those things. She had always felt strangely connected to the Victorian era, as if she had lived through it herself. And sometimes when she was very tired or emotional, she found herself using phrases and expressions that sounded like they came from another century. Even if that were true, she said desperately, I'm not Catherine. I'm Emma. I'm a different person. You're the same soul, Adrian said gently. The same beautiful, stubborn, independent soul that captured my heart 179 years ago. You've been reborn, Emma, given a second chance at the life that was cut short, and this time I won't let anything take you from me. Emma closed her eyes, feeling the world spinning around her. Part of her wanted to hang up and run as far away as possible, but another part of her, a part she didn't want to acknowledge, felt a strange pull toward Adrian's words. They explained so much about her life, so many of the feelings and connections she had never understood. I need time to think, she said finally. Of course, Adrian said, his voice warm with what sounded like genuine affection. But don't take too long, my dear. There are others who would see you harmed if they knew what you are to me. The longer you remain unprotected, the greater the danger becomes. What others? Emma asked, but the line had gone dead. She stood in the parking lot for a long time, holding her phone and staring up at the stars. Everything she thought she knew about the world had been turned upside down in the space of a few days. Either she was losing her mind or vampires were real, reincarnation was real, and she was caught in the middle of something far bigger and more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Emma drove home slowly, her mind churning with questions and doubts. When she reached her apartment, she poured herself a glass of wine and sat by her window, looking out at the quiet street below. For the first time since this had all started, she allowed herself to really consider Adrian's proposal. Not the marriage part, that was still completely insane, but the possibility that he was telling the truth about everything else. What if vampires were real? What if she really was the reincarnation of someone Adrian had loved? What if the strange feelings and connections she had experienced her entire life weren't coincidences but memories bleeding through from a past life? And what if Adrian wasn't the real threat she should be worried about? Emma fell asleep in her chair by the window, and for the first time in years her dreams were crystal clear. She dreamed of a grand estate in the English countryside, of wearing elaborate gowns and attending elegant parties. She dreamed of a young woman named Catherine who looked exactly like her, who laughed at the same things that made her sad. And she dreamed of Adrian Blackwood, looking exactly as he did now, standing in a moonlit garden and promising Catherine that he would love her for eternity. When Emma woke the next morning, she knew that everything Adrian had told her was true. The knowledge sat in her chest like a stone, heavy and undeniable. She was Catherine Whitmore reborn, and Adrian Blackwood was exactly what he claimed to be. The question now was what she was going to do about it. Emma spent the morning researching everything she could find about Adrian Blackwood. To her surprise, the name appeared in several historical documents and old newspaper archives. There were mentions of an Adrian Blackwood who owned vast estates in England during the 1800s, and another Adrian Blackwood who had been a prominent businessman in New York during the early 1900s. The photographs were old and blurry, but the face was unmistakably the same. Either this was an elaborate hoax involving fake historical documents, or Adrian really was immortal. Emma was so absorbed in her research that she almost missed the soft knock on her apartment door. When she opened it, she found a young woman about her own age standing in the hallway. The woman had short auburn hair, kind green eyes, and was wearing jeans and a sweater that looked normal enough, but something about her presence made Emma's skin prickle with awareness. "Emma Rodriguez?" the woman asked with a slight Irish accent. "Yes, my name is Sarah O'Connor." "I think we need to talk about Adrian Blackwood." Emma's hand tightened on the door handle. "Are you one of his people?" Sarah smiled grimly. "Quite the opposite." "May I come in? What I have to tell you isn't safe to discuss in the hallway." Against her better judgment, Emma stepped aside and let Sarah enter. The woman looked around the small apartment with sharp, observant eyes before settling on the couch. "You're in danger," Sarah said without preamble. "More danger than you realize." "From Adrian?" "From Adrian's world," Sarah corrected. "Tell me, has he explained to you what it means to be a vampire queen?" Emma sat down across from her. "He said something about power and immortality." Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. "He would. Let me tell you what he didn't mention. Being a vampire queen means being bound to him for eternity, unable to make any decision without his permission. It means watching him feed on human blood and eventually being forced to do the same. It means giving up everything that makes you human, your compassion, your free will, your soul." "How do you know all this?" Sarah rolled up the sleeve of her sweater, revealing a series of small, circular scars on her wrist. "Because I was almost a vampire queen myself 3 years ago. Adrian chose me just like he's chosen you. He courted me with gifts and promises, told me I was the reincarnation of some long-lost love." Emma's stomach dropped. "He told me I was Catherine Whitmore. He told me I was Isabella Moreau, a French nobleman's daughter from the 1600s. Very romantic, very convincing." Sarah's voice was bitter. "The dreams started, just like yours probably have. Vivid dreams of past lives and eternal love. He has a way of making those dreams feel more real than your actual life." "But how did you escape?" Sarah's expression darkened. "I didn't, not at first. I said yes to his proposal. I let him turn me into something else. For 6 months, I was part of his world. I lived in his castle, wore the gowns he chose for me, attended his court functions like a pretty decoration on his arm." "Castle?" Emma asked faintly. "Oh, yes, he has several. The one I lived in is hidden in the mountains of Romania. It's beautiful and terrible, filled with creatures that used to be human. Adrian calls them his children, but they're more like slaves. Vampires who owe him their existence and will do anything he commands." Emma felt sick. "But you're here now. You got away." "I got lucky," Sarah said. "There's a group of people who fight against vampires like Adrian. They're called the Covenant, and they've been working for centuries to protect humans from supernatural predators. They found me and helped me break free from Adrian's control, but it wasn't easy, and it wasn't complete." Sarah pulled down the collar of her sweater, revealing 2 small puncture wounds on her neck that looked fresh despite her claim that she had escaped 3 years ago. "Once you're bound to a vampire king, you can never be completely free," Sarah explained. "He can still call to me through dreams. He can still track my location if I stay in one place too long. That's why I move constantly and why I have to wear these." She opened her hand to reveal a small silver pendant hanging around her neck. It was inscribed with symbols Emma didn't recognize. "Blessed silver," Sarah said. "It helps block his influence, but it's not perfect." "Nothing is." Emma stared at the pendant, a chill running down her spine. Why are you telling me this? What do you want from me? I want to save you from making the same mistake I did, Sarah said earnestly. Adrian is charming and compelling, and he makes everything sound romantic and exciting. But he's a monster, Emma. I've seen him drain people completely dry and laugh about it afterward. I've seen him torture his own children for failing to follow his orders quickly enough. The man who courts you with flowers and poetry is the same man who has killed thousands of people over the centuries. Emma wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. But he said I was in danger from others if I didn't accept his protection. That's one of his favorite lies, Sarah said. He creates the danger himself, then offers to save you from it. There are other supernatural creatures in the world, but most of them avoid humans completely. Adrian is the one you need protection from. Then why hasn't he just taken me by force, if he's as powerful as you say? Sarah was quiet for a moment. That's what worries me most, she said finally. Adrian has never been patient with his previous chosen ones. Usually he would have simply kidnapped you by now and dealt with your protests later. The fact that he's courting you, giving you time to think, leaving gifts instead of just taking what he wants, it suggests that you're more important to him than the others were. Emma thought about her dreams of Catherine Whitmore, about the way Adrian had looked at her with something that seemed almost like genuine love. He said I was the reincarnation of someone he loved in the past. He says that to everyone, Sarah replied, but she didn't sound entirely convinced. Although, what was the name he gave you? Catherine Whitmore. From 1847. Sarah frowned. I've never heard him mention that name before. Usually, he just makes something up on the spot. She pulled out her phone and quickly typed something. The Covenant keeps records of all his known victims. Let me check. After a few minutes of scrolling, Sarah looked up with an expression Emma couldn't read. There really was a Catherine Whitmore, she said slowly. Daughter of Lord Edmund Whitmore, born 1825, died 1847. The records say she was engaged to be married when she died suddenly of a fever. Emma's heart pounded. Engaged to who? Sarah continued reading. The engagement was announced, but the groom's name isn't listed. But here's what's interesting. There are reports of strange occurrences around the Whitmore estate in the months before Catherine's death. Servants reported seeing a pale man in dark clothes watching the house at night. Livestock were found drained of blood. Catherine herself was said to have become distant and dreamy, as if she were under some kind of spell. Emma felt the room spinning around her. So it's true, I really am her. Maybe, Sarah said carefully. Or maybe Adrian has just done his research and found a convincing story to tell you. Either way, it doesn't change what he is or what he'll do to you if you give him the chance. Emma stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street below. What if I said yes but demanded conditions? What if I made him agree to certain terms? Emma, no, Sarah said urgently. You can't negotiate with someone like Adrian. He'll agree to anything to get what he wants, then break every promise once you're bound to him. That's how I ended up trapped in his castle, believing I was living a fairy tale until it was too late. But you said yourself that I seemed to be different from his other chosen ones. Maybe I could maintain some control. Sarah stood up and grabbed Emma's shoulders. Listen to me, I thought I was different too. I thought I was special, that he really loved me, that I could change him or at least protect myself. But vampire kings don't change, Emma. They don't compromise. They take what they want and destroy anything that gets in their way. Emma pulled away from Sarah's grip. So what's my alternative? Run away? Hide for the rest of my life? The Covenant can help you, Sarah said. They have safe houses, ways to block supernatural tracking, methods to keep you hidden from Adrian permanently. You mean live like you do? Constantly moving, never able to stay in one place, wearing blessed silver and looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life? Sarah's face fell. It's not a perfect solution, but it's better than becoming Adrian's prisoner. Emma turned back to the window. Is it? At least as his queen, I'd have some kind of power. I'd be immortal, wealthy, able to do things that matter in the world. You'd be a puppet, Sarah said sharply. A beautiful decoration who does exactly what she's told. Is that really the kind of power you want? Before Emma could answer, both women heard the sound of slow, deliberate clapping from behind them. They spun around to find Adrian Blackwood standing in the middle of the room, somehow having entered without making a sound. "Bravo, Sarah," he said, his voice carrying a mix of amusement and annoyance. "Though I must say your description of our time together is rather unflattering. I remember you being quite happy during those 6 months." Sarah stepped protectively in front of Emma, her hand going to the silver pendant at her throat. "I was under your influence. That wasn't happiness, it was magical compulsion." Adrian shrugged elegantly. "Does it matter? You experienced joy, pleasure, purpose. Isn't that enough?" "Get out," Emma said, finding her voice. "I didn't invite you in." Adrian smiled and gestured around the apartment. "Technically, this building doesn't belong to you. You merely rent this space, and I have an understanding with the landlord." Emma felt a chill of fear. "What kind of understanding?" "The kind that ensures your safety and comfort, my dear. Thompson is well compensated for allowing me access to the building when necessary." Sarah pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the Covenant." "They can be here in 20 minutes. "Please do," Adrian said pleasantly. "I'd love to meet some of your friends. It's been some time since I've had a proper challenge." Sarah paled but kept her phone in her hand. "You can't just take her, Adrian. There are laws, even in your world." "Laws?" Adrian laughed. "I am the law in my world, Sarah. But you're right about one thing. I won't take Emma by force. Not yet." He turned his attention to Emma, his blue eyes seeming to glow in the afternoon sunlight streaming through her window. "I came here because I felt you needed to hear the truth from me directly, not filtered through the bitterness of someone who couldn't appreciate what she was offered." "The truth?" Emma asked. "Or more lies?" "I have never lied to you," Adrian said seriously. "I told you that you are Catherine Whitmore reborn, and you are. I told you that I loved her, and I did. I told you that I want you to be my queen, and that is my deepest desire." "What you didn't tell her," Sarah interjected, "is that Catherine died because of you. The fever that killed her was caused by your bite. You tried to turn her into a vampire and failed, killing her instead." Adrian's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "Catherine was dying already when I found her. She had consumption wasting away day by day. I offered her immortality, a chance to live forever young and healthy." "And when the transformation failed?" Sarah pressed. "I have regretted that night for 179 years, Adrian said quietly. "I was younger then, less skilled in the art of creating new vampires. I made mistakes that cost Catherine her life." Emma felt her heart clench with an emotion she couldn't name. "So you've been waiting all this time for me to be reborn?" "I've been searching," Adrian corrected. "I knew that souls like Catherine's don't simply disappear. They return again and again until they find their purpose. I've found 3 other women over the decades who I thought might be her, but they weren't. You are." "How can you be sure?" Adrian stepped closer, and Emma felt that strange pull again, the feeling that she had known him for much longer than a few days. "Because when I look at you, I see her. When you laugh, it's her laugh. When you get that stubborn set to your chin, like you have right now, you're exactly as she was. And when you dream at night, you remember things that only Catherine could know." Emma thought of her dreams, of the detailed knowledge she seemed to have of 19th century England, of the way she instinctively knew how to dance waltzes she had never learned. "Even if that's true," she said, "I'm not her. I'm me. I have my own life, my own dreams, my own choices to make." "Of course you do," Adrian agreed. "And I'm not asking you to give up being Emma. I'm asking you to become more than Emma, to become what you were meant to be." Sarah made a sound of disgust, more pretty words to disguise the cage he's building around you. Adrian's gaze flicked to Sarah with cold annoyance. Sarah chose to see our relationship as imprisonment because she was afraid of her own power. She preferred the safety of her small human life to the responsibility of true authority. "I saw you kill people for sport," Sarah shot back. I saw you torture servants who spilled wine on your carpets. That's not authority, that's sadism. I maintain order in my territory, Adrian said calmly. Sometimes that requires harsh discipline. The alternative is chaos, and chaos helps no one. Emma listened to them argue, her mind racing. Sarah's warnings were terrifying, but there was something in Adrian's manner that suggested he wasn't lying about his feelings for her. The way he looked at her, spoke to her, even the way he had entered her apartment. He could have simply taken her at any point, but he hadn't. He really did seem to want her to choose this willingly. What would it really be like? She asked suddenly, interrupting their argument. If I said yes, what would my life actually look like? Sarah stared at her in horror. Emma, you can't be considering this. I need to understand what I'm choosing between, Emma said firmly. Sarah's told me her version. Now I want to hear his. Adrian smiled, and for a moment he looked almost boyishly pleased. You would live in comfort beyond anything you can imagine. My castles are filled with art and books from every era of human history. You would have servants to attend to your every need, gowns that cost more than most people make in a year, jewels that have belonged to queens and empresses. That's just material things, Emma said. What about my actual life? My freedom? You would rule beside me, Adrian said. My vampire children would be your subjects as well as mine. You would help me govern our territories, make decisions about the lives and deaths of thousands of supernatural creatures. Your word would be law to everyone except me. And if I disagreed with you? Adrian paused, considering. We would discuss it privately. I would listen to your counsel. But ultimately, I am the king. My word is final. So I'd be a figurehead, Emma said. A pretty ornament with no real power. You would have more power than any human woman in history, Adrian replied. The ability to command vampires, to live forever, to accumulate wealth and knowledge across centuries. How is that not real power? Because it's all dependent on you, Emma said. If you decided you were tired of me, or if I displeased you too much, you could take it all away. Adrian's expression grew serious. Emma, I have waited nearly 2 centuries for you. I will never tire of you. And you could never displease me enough to make me cast you aside. You say that now, but what about in 50 years? 100? What if I change? Or you change? Vampires don't change, Adrian said simply. We are what we are forever. I will love you the same in 1,000 years as I do today. The certainty in his voice was both comforting and terrifying. Emma found herself imagining what it would be like to live forever, to have endless time to learn and experience everything the world had to offer. But she also thought about what Sarah had said about watching Adrian kill people, about the servants who lived in fear. What about the killing? She asked. Sarah says you murder people for sport. Adrian's jaw tightened slightly. I feed when I need to feed. Sometimes that results in death, sometimes it doesn't. I don't kill for sport, but I also don't pretend to value human life the way humans do. You wouldn't either once you're fully transformed. What do you mean? Vampires see humans the way humans see cattle, Adrian explained matter-of-factly. Necessary for survival, but not worthy of emotional attachment. You'll understand once you complete the transformation. Emma felt sick. So I'd lose my humanity completely? You'd gain something better, Adrian said. You'd gain perspective, the ability to see the bigger picture instead of getting caught up in individual tragedies. The ability to not care when innocent people die, Sarah translated harshly. Adrian shrugged, if you prefer to think of it that way. Emma walked to the window again, staring out at the street where normal people were living normal lives, walking their dogs, carrying groceries, talking on phones. None of them knew that vampires existed, that there were ancient creatures debating their worth as if they were livestock. I need time to think, she said finally. Of course, Adrian said, but don't take too long. There are forces at work that may not give you the luxury of a lengthy decision period. What forces? Sarah demanded. Adrian smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. The Covenant isn't the only group that knows about Emma's unique situation. There are others who would see her destroyed rather than allow her to become my queen. Emma's blood ran cold. What others? Other vampire kings who see my potential happiness as a threat to their own power. Ancient enemies who would kill Catherine's reincarnation simply to hurt me. Human hunters who believe all vampires and their associates should be destroyed. You're trying to scare her into accepting your protection, Sarah said angrily. I'm telling her the truth, Adrian replied. The moment word spread that I had found Catherine reborn, Emma became the most valuable target in the supernatural world. Everyone wants her, either to use against me or to destroy her completely. Emma felt the walls of her small apartment closing in around her. So my choices are to become your vampire queen or to be killed by your enemies, or to accept the Covenant's protection, Sarah said quickly. We can keep you safe. Adrian laughed. Sarah, my dear, you can barely keep yourself safe. You've been running for 3 years and you're still not free of me. What makes you think you can protect Emma from forces far more powerful than myself? Sarah's face paled, but she lifted her chin defiantly. Because we have resources you don't know about, ways of hiding people that even vampire kings can't trace. Is that what you told yourself when you came here? Adrian asked gently. Did you really think I wouldn't know exactly where you were the moment you set foot in this town? Sarah's hand went to her silver pendant, her eyes wide with fear. You're lying. I've been watching you watch Emma for the past week, Adrian continued, waiting to see what you would tell her. How you would try to poison her against me. I must say your timing is impeccable. Just as Emma was beginning to truly consider my offer, here you are with your tales of torture and imprisonment. Emma looked between them, her head spinning. You've been watching both of us? I watch everything that affects you, my dear, Adrian said. It's my job to keep you safe until you're ready to accept my protection officially. Your stalking isn't protection, Sarah said, but her voice shook slightly. It's imprisonment. Adrian tilted his head, studying Sarah with the detached interest of a scientist examining. Tell me, Sarah, how many times have you moved in the past 3 years? That's not relevant. 47 times, Adrian answered his own question. 47 different cities, never staying anywhere longer than a month. Always looking over your shoulder, always afraid. Is that really the kind of life you want Emma to choose? Emma looked at Sarah and saw the truth in her eyes. Despite her brave words about the Covenant's protection, Sarah was exhausted, frightened, and completely alone. She had traded one kind of prison for another. There has to be a third option, Emma said desperately. Something other than becoming a vampire or spending my life running. There is, Adrian said softly. You could trust me. Trust you to what? To love you? To protect you. To give you a life of purpose and meaning that extends far beyond the brief flicker of a human existence. Emma closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. When she opened them again, she found Adrian watching her with an expression of such longing and hope that it made her chest ache. If I said yes, she said slowly, when would it happen? The transformation, I mean. Sarah made a sound of protest, but Adrian silenced her with a look. Whenever you're ready, he said. It could be tonight or a year from now. The timing would be entirely your choice. And if I wanted to see your world first, your castle, your Keme, people, I would be honored to show you everything. You could stay as long as you liked, leave whenever you wished. You would be my guest, not my prisoner. You're lying, Sarah said desperately. Emma, once you're in his territory, you won't be able to leave. The magic that protects his strongholds also traps anyone he considers his. Adrian looked genuinely hurt by the accusation. Sarah, you left my castle multiple times during our 6 months together. You visited friends in London, went shopping in Paris, spent a week at a spa in Switzerland. Did I stop you? Sarah fell silent, and Emma realized that Adrian was telling the truth about that at least. What happened then? Emma asked Sarah. Why did you run if you were free to leave whenever you wanted? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Because I started to enjoy it. The power, the luxury, the way everyone feared and respected me. I started to forget why those things were wrong. She looked up at Emma with tears in her eyes. I was becoming like him, Emma. I was losing myself piece by piece, and by the time I realized what was happening, I didn't care enough to fight it. Emma felt a chill of recognition. Wasn't that exactly what was happening to her now? Each day, Adrian's offer seemed a little more reasonable, a little more attractive. The idea of immortality and power was starting to outweigh her concerns about the cost. "How long do I have to decide?" she asked Adrian. 3 days, he said. "After that, I won't be able to guarantee your safety from the other forces that want you." Emma nodded slowly. 3 days. "And you'll leave me alone until then? No more gifts, no more visits?" Adrian smiled. "If that's what you wish, though I hope you'll call if you have any questions." He moved toward the door with that same impossible speed, then paused. "Sarah, you're welcome to stay and continue trying to convince Emma to run. But remember, the Covenant's protection didn't save the last 3 women they tried to hide from me." With that ominous statement, he was gone, leaving Emma and Sarah alone in the suddenly quiet apartment. Sarah sank onto the couch, her face pale and drawn. "He's right, you know. The Covenant has lost people before. We're not perfect." Emma sat beside her. "But you really believe running is better than accepting his offer?" "I believe staying human is better than becoming a monster," Sarah said firmly. "Even if it means living in fear." Emma looked around her small apartment, thinking about her quiet life as a librarian. In 3 days, she would have to choose between that life and something unimaginable. Either way, the Emma Rodriguez who had shelved books and tutored children would cease to exist. The only question was what she would become instead. Emma barely slept that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind cycling endlessly through the impossible choice she had to make. Every option seemed to lead to the destruction of everything she had built for herself. Sarah had stayed over, sleeping on the couch with her phone close at hand in case she needed to call the Covenant for emergency extraction. But even with someone else in the apartment, Emma felt completely alone with her decision. The next morning, Emma called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. She couldn't imagine trying to help patrons find books and organize story time when her entire worldview had been turned upside down. Instead, she spent the day walking around town, looking at familiar places and wondering if she would ever see them again. At the coffee shop where she bought her morning latte, she watched the barista, a college student named Marcus, who always smiled and asked about her weekend plans. He had no idea that supernatural creatures existed, that there were beings who considered humans nothing more than food sources. His biggest concerns were probably midterm exams and whether he could afford to go out with friends on Friday night. Emma envied him desperately. "You're thinking too hard," Sarah said, joining her at a small table by the window. "I can see the wheels turning from across the room." "How do you do it?" Emma asked. "How do you live with knowing all of this exists and not go insane?" Sarah stirred her tea thoughtfully. "Some days I'm not sure I haven't gone insane. But then I remember that the alternative is worse. At least this way I'm still me. Frightened and running, maybe, but still human. What if Adrian is right, though? What if being human isn't as important as I think it is?"
"Emma," Sarah's voice held a warning. "No, really.
Think about it. Humans live for maybe 80 years if they're lucky. We spend most of that time working jobs we don't love to pay for, things we don't need. We get sick, we age, we die, and most of us never make any real impact on the world. But we love," Sarah said fiercely. "We create art and music and literature. We form connections with each other that matter. Vampires can do those things too." Adrian said his castles are filled with art from every era of history. He's had centuries to learn, to experience, to create. Sarah leaned forward urgently. "Emma, listen to yourself. You're already starting to think like one of them." This is how it begins. You start to see human life as small and meaningless instead of precious and irreplaceable. Emma fell silent, recognizing the truth in Sarah's words. When had she started thinking of her life as insignificant? A week ago, she had been perfectly content with her work at the library, her small apartment, her quiet routine. Now it all seemed pointless and temporary. That afternoon, Emma found herself standing outside St. Mary's Catholic Church, even though she hadn't been religious since childhood. Something about the solid stone walls and the sound of hymns drifting through the open doors felt comforting in a world that suddenly made no sense. She slipped inside and sat in the back pew listening to the choir practice for Sunday service. The church was mostly empty except for a few elderly parishioners saying their prayers and an older priest arranging flowers near the altar. "Can I help you, my child?" the priest asked, approaching her with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Emma almost laughed at the question. "I don't think anyone can help me, Father. That's what I thought when I was your age," he said, settling beside her on the wooden pew. "I'm Father McKenna. I don't think I've seen you here before. I'm Emma. I used to come here when I was little with my grandmother. Mrs. Rodriguez. She was a wonderful woman. I remember her well." Father McKenna smiled warmly. "She always said you were a special child, very thoughtful, very kind." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. Her grandmother had been dead for 5 years, but she still missed her terribly. What would she say about this impossible situation? "Father, do you believe in evil?" Emma asked suddenly. "Not just human evil, but something more?" Father McKenna studied her carefully. "I believe in many things that others might find hard to accept." "Why do you ask?" Emma hesitated. She couldn't tell him about vampires, but maybe she could speak in generalities. What if someone offered you everything you ever wanted, but the price was becoming something you weren't sure you wanted to be? "That's one of the oldest temptations in the book," Father McKenna said gently. "The question isn't what you'd gain, but what you'd lose. And whether what you'd lose is worth more than what you'd gain. But what if what you'd lose is temporary anyway? What if you'd lose it eventually no matter what you chose? Everything in this life is temporary, child. That doesn't make it less valuable. A single day lived with purpose and love is worth more than 1,000 years lived without them." Emma thought about Adrian's promise of immortality, of endless time to learn and experience everything. But what would be the point of all that time if she lost the ability to care about individual human lives? If she became like Adrian, seeing people as nothing more than livestock? "Father, what if someone you cared about was in danger and the only way to save them was to do something terrible?" Father McKenna was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes we tell ourselves that we're making sacrifices for others when we're really just afraid to face hard truths about ourselves. The question you need to ask is, are you really saving this person, or are you looking for a reason to justify doing what you already want to do?" Emma felt like he had seen straight through her soul. Was she really trying to protect herself from Adrian's enemies, or was she looking for reasons to justify accepting his offer because part of her wanted the power and immortality he promised? "How do I know the difference?" she whispered. "Prayer helps," Father McKenna said simply. "So does honest self-reflection. What does your heart tell you when you strip away all the rationalizations and excuses?" Emma closed her eyes and tried to listen to her heart. Beneath all the fear and confusion, beneath the attraction to Adrian's promises and the terror of Sarah's warnings, what did she really want? She wanted to go back to her quiet life. She wanted to shelve books and tutor children and drink coffee with Marcus the barista. She wanted to grow old naturally and die peacefully in her own bed, surrounded by people who loved her for who she was, not for who she used to be in some past life. But that life was gone now, whether she chose Adrian or not. The knowledge of vampires and supernatural threats couldn't be unknown. Even if she ran with Sarah, she would spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, never able to trust in the simple safety of ordinary human existence. "Thank you, Father," Emma said, standing up. "You've been very helpful." "Will I see you on Sunday?" he asked hopefully. Emma smiled sadly. "I don't think I'll be in town on Sunday." She left the church feeling clearer about one thing. She didn't want to become a vampire. Whatever Adrian promised, the cost was too high. She would rather live a short, frightened life as a human than an eternal one as a monster. But that still left the question of how to stay alive long enough to have any kind of life at all. That evening, Emma called Sarah aside while they were making dinner in her small kitchen. "I've made my decision," she said quietly. "I want to go with the covenant. I want to try to stay human." Sarah's face lit up with relief. "Oh, Emma, I'm so glad. I was afraid. I thought Adrian was winning you over." "He almost did," Emma admitted. "The promises he makes are very tempting. But I realized that I'd rather be myself for 40 more years than be someone else forever." Sarah hugged her tightly. "We'll keep you safe. I promise. I know you'll try. When can we leave?" "Tonight, if you want. I can have a Covenant extraction team here within 2 hours." Emma looked around her apartment, at the books lining her shelves and the photos on her walls. "I suppose there's no point in waiting." "Let me pack a few things." As Emma filled a suitcase with clothes and personal items, she found herself thinking about Catherine Whitmore. Had Catherine faced a similar choice 179 years ago? Had Adrian courted her with the same promises, the same overwhelming intensity? Emma pulled out an old jewelry box that had belonged to her grandmother and opened the lid. Inside was a locket she had inherited but never worn, along with a few other pieces of antique jewelry. As she lifted the locket to examine it more closely, something fell out and clattered to the floor. It was a small brass key, old and tarnished with age. Emma had never seen it before, but somehow it looked familiar. As she held it up to the light, memories that weren't her own flooded her mind. Catherine Whitmore standing in a moonlit garden, pressing the key into the hand of a young maid. "Hide this, Mary. If anything happens to me, make sure it stays in the family. Someday, when I return, I'll need it again." Emma dropped the key as if it had burned her, her hand shaking. The memory had been so vivid, so real, that for a moment she had forgotten she was Emma Rodriguez and not Catherine Whitmore. "Emma? Are you all right?" Sarah called from the living room. "The extraction team will be here in an hour." Emma picked up the key again, and this time the memories came more gently. Catherine had hidden something important, something that could protect her from Adrian. The memory was frustratingly incomplete, but Emma knew with absolute certainty that the key was important. Whatever Catherine had hidden, Emma needed to find it. "Sarah," she called, walking back to the living room with the key in her palm, "I need to make a stop before we leave town." Sarah looked at the key suspiciously. "What is that?" "I think it belonged to Catherine Whitmore. I think she left something for me to find." "Emma, no. We don't have time for treasure hunts. The Covenant team will be here soon, and we need to leave immediately. What if what she left behind could help us? What if she found a way to protect herself from Adrian that we don't know about?" Sarah shook her head firmly. "It's too dangerous. Whatever that key opens, it's probably exactly what Adrian would expect you to look for. It could be a trap." But Emma was already putting on her jacket. "I have to know, Sarah. This might be my only chance to understand what really happened between them." "Then let's call Adrian and ask him," Sarah said sarcastically. "I'm sure he'd be happy to explain." Emma paused, considering. "Actually, that's not a bad idea. Emma, no." But Emma was already dialing Adrian's number. He answered immediately, as if he had been waiting for her call. "Emma," his voice was warm with pleasure, "have you reached a decision?" "I have questions first. About Catherine Whitmore. About how she really died." There was a long pause. "I told you the truth about that. I tried to transform her and failed. She died because I was inexperienced." "What aren't you telling me?" Another pause, longer this time. "Where are you, Emma?" "That doesn't matter. What I want to know is why Catherine was afraid of you. What did she do to try to protect herself?" Adrian's voice became very quiet. "How do you know she was afraid of me?" Emma looked down at the key in her hand. "I just know. She hid something, didn't she? Something she thought could keep her safe from you. Emma, you need to be very careful. If you found what I think you found, you're in more danger than you realize." "Danger from you?" "Danger from what Catherine unleashed trying to escape me, my dear. There are some secrets that are better left buried." The line went dead, leaving Emma staring at her phone in frustration. "He knows what this key opens," she told Sarah, "and he's afraid of it." Sarah grabbed Emma's arm. "All the more reason to leave it alone. The extraction team will be here in 30 minutes. We need to be ready to go." But Emma shook her head. "I can't run away without knowing the truth. I won't spend my life wondering what Catherine left for me." "Fine. Sarah said, checking her watch. Where do we need to go? Emma closed her eyes and let Catherine's memories guide her. The old cemetery. The Whitmore family mausoleum. The Millbrook Cemetery was a 20-minute drive from Emma's apartment, a sprawling collection of headstones and monuments dating back to the town's founding in 1823. The Whitmore Mausoleum stood on a small hill near the back, an imposing stone structure that had weathered over a century and a half of New England winters. Emma parked near the cemetery gates and grabbed a flashlight from her car's emergency kit. Sarah followed reluctantly, constantly checking her phone for messages from the extraction team. This is insane, Sarah muttered as they made their way through the dark cemetery. We're going to get ourselves killed for some Victorian woman's diary or jewelry box. But Emma barely heard her. Catherine's memories were getting stronger as they approached the mausoleum. She could almost see herself, or rather Catherine, standing in this same spot on a cold night in 1847, frantically digging a small hole beside the monument. The key fit perfectly into a hidden lock at the base of the mausoleum. Emma turned it with trembling hands, and a small stone panel slid aside, revealing a cavity that had been hidden for nearly 2 centuries. Inside was a leather-wrapped bundle. Emma pulled it out carefully and unwrapped it by flashlight. Inside the leather was a small wooden box containing several items, a silver cross, a vial of what looked like blessed water, and a journal bound in black leather. Emma opened the journal to the first page, written in Catherine's careful handwriting. If you are reading this, then Adrian Blackwood has found me again. I pray that whoever you are wiser than I was and stronger than I proved to be. What I discovered about Adrian's true nature may be the key to stopping him forever. Emma's hands shook as she read the words. Sarah, look at this! But when she turned around, Sarah was gone. In her place stood Adrian, his pale skin glowing in the moonlight as he watched Emma with an expression she had never seen before. For the first time since she had met him, Adrian Blackwood looked genuinely afraid. You shouldn't have found that, he said quietly. Emma clutched the journal to her chest. What did Catherine discover about you? Adrian took a step forward, then stopped as Emma held up the silver cross. She discovered what I really am. Not just a vampire, Emma. Something much worse.
I don't understand. Catherine learned that I'm not simply immortal.
I'm a soul eater. Every person I transform doesn't just become a vampire. Their soul becomes part of me. Every woman I've chosen as a queen has fed my power with her very essence. Emma's blood ran cold. You've been collecting souls for centuries. I've been trying to become complete, Adrian corrected. Each soul I absorb makes me stronger, more powerful. But none of them were right. None of them were Catherine. Her soul is the missing piece I need to achieve true immortality, true power over life and death itself. Emma backed away from him, still clutching the cross. That's why you've been so patient with me. You don't just want me as your queen, you want to devour my soul. I want to unite us, Adrian said, his voice taking on the hypnotic quality Emma had heard before. Your soul and mine, joined forever. We would be one being with the power of gods. And what would happen to me, to Emma? Adrian's smile was sad and terrifying. Emma would cease to exist, but Catherine would live forever as part of something greater. Emma ran. She sprinted through the cemetery, leaping over headstones and dodging monuments in the darkness. Behind her, she could hear Adrian following, but he wasn't using his supernatural speed. He was letting her run, confident that she couldn't escape him. Emma reached her car and fumbled with the keys, her hands shaking so badly she could barely get the door open. As the engine roared to life, Adrian appeared beside the driver's side window. You can't run from what you are, Emma, he said calmly. Catherine's soul belongs to me. It always has. Emma floored the accelerator and sped away, leaving Adrian standing in the cemetery parking lot. In her rearview mirror, she saw him pull out his phone and make a call. She drove aimlessly for an hour, her mind racing. Sarah was gone. Captured or killed, Emma didn't know which. The Covenant extraction team would be arriving at her apartment to find no one there. She was completely alone with the knowledge that one of the most powerful supernatural creatures in existence was determined to consume her soul. Emma finally stopped at an all-night diner on the outskirts of town, where she sat in a corner booth and read through Catherine's journal by the harsh fluorescent lights. Catherine's story was heartbreaking. She had loved Adrian at first, believing his promises of eternal love and immortality. But as their relationship progressed, she had begun to notice things. Servants who seemed hollow and lifeless, as if something essential had been drained from them. Other women who had been Adrian's queens in the past, now mindless shells who served in his castle without will or personality. Catherine had investigated and discovered the truth. Adrian didn't create vampires the way other vampires did. He consumed souls, leaving behind empty vessels that followed his commands. Every person he claimed to love became nothing more than a puppet with his desires controlling their every action. The worst revelation came near the end of the journal. Adrian told me tonight that he has done this before. Not once, not twice, but dozens of times across the centuries. Each time my soul is reborn, he finds me again. Each time he convinces me to love him, to trust him, to give myself to him willingly. And each time he consumes me and grows stronger. Emma felt sick. This wasn't the second time Adrian had found Catherine's reincarnation. It was perhaps the 20th or 30th. How many lifetimes had this cycle repeated? How many versions of herself had fallen for his promises and been destroyed? But Catherine's final entries offered hope. She had found a way to break the cycle. Using ancient magic she had learned from a dying witch, Catherine had bound part of her soul to the physical world, ensuring that when Adrian consumed her, he wouldn't get all of her. The part that remained would carry the memory of what he truly was, and when she was reborn, she would have a chance to resist him. The key, the cross, the blessed water, and the journal itself were all part of Catherine's spell. Together, they could protect Emma's soul from being completely consumed and give her the power to fight back. Emma read the incantation Catherine had written, practicing the unfamiliar words under her breath. It was dangerous magic. There was a good chance it would kill her outright. But the alternative was worse than death. The alternative was having her very essence consumed by a monster who would then use her power to do the same thing to countless others. Emma's phone buzzed with a text message from Adrian. The diner on Route 9. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Don't run again, Emma. There's nowhere you can go that I won't find you. Emma looked around the diner at the handful of late-night customers, a truck driver nursing coffee at the counter, an elderly couple sharing a piece of pie, a waitress who looked like she'd been on her feet for 12 hours. If Adrian came here, he might hurt innocent people to get to her. She left money on the table and walked outside into the parking lot. If she was going to make her final stand, it would be away from people who didn't deserve to be caught in the crossfire. Adrian appeared in the parking lot exactly 10 minutes later, moving with that impossible grace that no longer seemed beautiful to Emma. It looked predatory now, like a spider approaching a fly caught in its web. I hoped we could resolve this peacefully, he said, stopping about 10 feet away from her. I hoped you would come to understand that resistance is futile. I understand perfectly now, Emma replied, Catherine's journal clutched in one hand and the silver cross in the other. I understand that you're not offering me immortality, you're offering me obliteration. Adrian sighed. Such a limited way to think about it. When we are joined, you'll be part of something magnificent. Your consciousness may fade, but your essence will live forever as part of me. That's not living. That's being murdered and having my corpse puppeteered by a monster. If that's how you choose to see it, Adrian began walking toward her, his eyes beginning to glow with that otherworldly light. But your choice in the matter has come to an end. Emma opened Catherine's journal to the final page and began reading the incantation aloud. The words felt strange on her tongue, as if they were being spoken in a language she had once known but forgotten. Adrian stopped moving, his expression shifting from confidence to concern. Emma, don't. You don't understand what that spell will do. I understand perfectly, Emma said, her voice growing stronger as she continued the incantation. Catherine explained everything. This spell will destroy both of us, but it will also break the cycle. You'll never be able to find my soul again. You'll die, Adrian said urgently, not just this life, but forever. Your soul will be scattered to the winds. There will be no more reincarnations, no more chances at life. Emma paused for just a moment. Was she really prepared to give up not just this life, but all future lives to stop Adrian? Was preventing him from consuming her soul worth ending her existence permanently? She thought about all the other Catherines who had come before, all the versions of herself who had been tricked and consumed. She thought about all the future Emmas who would face this same choice if she didn't end it now. And she thought about Sarah, who had tried to save her and was now probably dead because of it. Yes, Emma said firmly, and continued the incantation. The spell reached its crescendo, and Emma felt power flowing through her like electricity. She opened the vial of blessed water and poured it over the silver cross, which began to glow with brilliant white light. Adrian screamed and fell to his knees, his form seeming to flicker and fade as if he were being torn apart at the molecular level. "Emma, please, I love you. You've never loved anyone," Emma replied, raising the glowing cross above her head. "You're incapable of love. You only know how to consume." She spoke the final words of Catherine's spell, and the world exploded into light. When Emma opened her eyes, she was lying on the cold asphalt of the parking lot. Dawn was breaking over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Her whole body ached as if she had been hit by a truck, but she was alive. Adrian was gone. Not just absent, completely gone. The parking lot held no trace that he had ever existed. Even Emma's memories of him were starting to fade, as if the spell had burned away everything connected to his influence. Emma struggled to her feet and looked down at Catherine's journal. The pages were blank now, the ink erased by whatever power had been unleashed. The silver cross was just silver again, and the blessed water had evaporated completely. But Emma was still herself, still human, still alive, still free. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Emma, this is Sarah. The Covenant got me out. Are you safe? Where are you?" Emma smiled for the first time in days. She texted back, "I'm safe." "It's over. I'll explain everything when I see you." As Emma drove back toward town, she found herself thinking about her quiet life at the library, about tutoring children and drinking coffee with Marcus, the barista. Those simple pleasures seemed more precious now than any promise of immortality or supernatural power. She had chosen humanity, and despite everything it had cost her, Emma knew it was the right choice. She was herself, not Catherine, not a vampire queen, not part of some monstrous collection of consumed souls, just Emma Rodriguez, librarian, human being, survivor. The sun rose higher as she drove, filling her car with warm, natural light. Emma rolled down the windows and let the morning breeze blow through her hair, carrying with it the scent of coffee and fresh bread from the bakeries that were just opening for business.
She was alive.
She rejected the Vampire King's marriage request, then uncovered his true self.